Welcome back to Sunday Morning Quickies, episode 116 for the 21st of April, 2024. If you've used a Singer sewing machine in a Bentwood case, odds are it probably, if it's an early one anyway, probably used Chicago plugs on this power cord to get power cord into the sewing machine. Personally, I think Chicago plugs are one of the worst solutions to that problem of getting power to the machine. And I've been looking for a way around the Chicago plug situation, and I've come up with something. So let me get a machine on the bench, and we'll discuss it. And I'll demonstrate to you what I think is an excellent solution to get around it. I have this particular 128 clamped down to the surface of my bench here with a little quick grip clamp so I could have the machine tilted back in the case while I'm working on it. This particular machine does not have a lamp on it. It is just the motor and the motor control. But the wiring is, essentially the same as any other Singer sewing machine. Back here, these terminals here, this is where the Chicago plugs would plug in through the holes here in the metal cover plate. Now, this particular machine, these the brass terminals that came off the top of these screw top connectors, they were damaged. So what I had done was I had cut them flush, and I had used some hot melt glue just to protect the top of it. Yeah, it's ugly, I know, but it is what it is. And I'm just going to point out a couple of things here. Now, none of this at the moment is color-coded. And unfortunately, I'm not going to go digging back into this motor that's on here to add color-coded wire. It's just not going to happen. These two connectors up here, these two terminals where the brass pieces that came off it have been cut flush and then covered with hot glue to insulate it. This would be like pins 1 and 3, and this connector over here, which is just a junction, would be the equivalent of connector 2. Now, if we were to add a light to this, it would just be 2 more wires that would be coming across 1 and 3 here. And the way this machine had been being used was a standard piece of lamp cord was coming through the hole through the grommet here, and there were regular ring connectors, insulated ring connectors on there, and they were connecting underneath these. These are actually screw caps. Let me get one off, and you can see. And these would join up here and just go on. Well, we're going to get rid of the fixed power cord. And what we're going to use instead is this connector here. Now, this is actually a waterproof connector. It's rated for, I believe, 370 volts. This is a 2-pin variety. For those of you in the EU, I know you complain about us crazy Americans not grounding our sewing machines. This particular machine was made in the 1920s, and it was not made with a 3-wire connection. It was just a 2-wire connection. They do make this connector as a 3-wire, so technically you could add a 3rd ground wire and actually ground to the machine itself. I am not going to do that in this one. Those of us here in the United States, we have been dealing with 2-wire connections on our sewing machines for a long, long time. But anyway, whether I'm right or wrong in doing that is immaterial. It's the way it's going to be for this particular machine. This one's mine. I'm not selling it or anything like that. So this also, when you pull this apart, this has female ends. This is going to be the end that gets attached to the power cord. And this panel mount is going to get mounted onto the the panel mount, the metal panel that covers the foot controller here, excuse me, the knee bar controller. Now, it's not going to work with this terminal block in this position. This is going to have to get shifted over so this has a place to live where it'll come through. So we're going to start off, we're going to have to move this terminal block over a little bit because it will not fit underneath this panel mount connector. Let me zoom back a little bit. There we go. This is going to protrude down and it would be hitting into this connector here. So the first step in our process is going to be to take these screws out. Actually, I'm going to disconnect the wiring completely just to get everything out of the way because we're going to reroute wire here a little bit. I'm going to get all this wiring out of the way, and we're going to move this this one terminal block we're going to move. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Let me get something to get those screws out. Okay. Grace, my cat Gracie, has been missing me all day because Liz and I spent the day working over at New Jersey Blind Citizens Association today at their annual spring artisan market, and she's not used to Daddy not being home. Okay, so now I just moved that over, and I'm going to go ahead. This wood's a little softer. I really don't need to use a power screwdriver for this, but it was nice to get it loosened up. I'm just putting this block over, and I'm going to double check to make sure everything's going to clear. Once I get it secured in place, it shouldn't be a problem anymore. I've got the first wire set up in my third hand, like a jig in my third hand. I'm just going to clean off the tip of my soldering gun here. This is actually something I should be doing with a lower wattage soldering iron, but I'm not, so as long as I don't sit there hanging on to it forever with the heat, it should be okay. Go ahead, and that's now positioned in for the second wire. And get a little bit of heat on there. And then just touch on the solder. There it goes. That'll be fine. And go ahead and insulate this completely, and grab a heat gun and shrink that down. These wires do not need to be very long at all, but I'm going to be a little bit more generous than Singer would have been. So just to make it easier to maneuver this later, I'm going to cut these a couple of inches, which is actually technically a lot longer than they need to be. I'm going to go ahead and put some ring terminals on this. You're probably wondering, you're saying, okay Bob, you're sticking the panel mount here, what are you going to do with this other hole? Well, I found these little plastic caps at McMaster-Carr. They do fit in the hole nicely, but they don't exactly lock in. So what I'm going to do, I mean, if the hole was just a tiny bit smaller, they would lock nicely. So what I'm going to do, seeing how I've got them in the hole, even though they don't fit great, I'm going to take some thick super glue and just put a little bead of thick super glue, a couple of spots, And because I am impatient, and because super glue works best when you're working with something that is organic, meaning something that has moisture in it, I'm going to shoot a little accelerator on it, doing that away from the sewing machine, and let that sit for a moment. Wipe off the excess accelerator, and now that little plastic cap is essentially part of this metal cover. It's not going anywhere. So that's going to work just dandy. Alright, so we've got that in. I'm going to run the wires through the hole. Put the nut on once again. And oh, by the way, these things have a marking on them. There's a little white square. So you do that for alignment. So I'm going to put the little white square towards the operator so you don't have to look for it when you're putting everything together. And take a pair of pliers here and just tighten that up just a little bit. There we go. And voila, that is done. So now it's just a matter of reattaching everything where it needs to go, and then we'll make the power cord. So, how do these things get wired? Okay, this is how the wiring goes. It's really simple. We're going to consider these to be the equivalent of 1, 2, and 3 on a standard Singer 3-pin power block. So that would be the one that's yellow color coded as pin 1, pin 2 is black color coded, pin 3 is red color coded. So, as we all know, because we've done this a million times together, the yellow is one side of power to pin 1 and one side of the foot controller to pin 1. The other side of the foot controller goes to pin 2 and one side of the motor goes to pin 2. Pin 3 gets the other side of the motor and the other side of power. So it's power and controller, controller and motor and power. So essentially what we're doing is pin 2 is just a dumb connector. There's no power directly on it. What we're doing is we're connecting the motor and the controller in series across the power. It's very simple. So okay, let's button this up. We'll go ahead and we'll make our power cord, and then we'll test this puppy out. Okay, I cut about one of my wingspans of 18 gauge lamp cord, and I've got about a 6-foot wingspan. So I cut one of my wingspans of 18 gauge lamp cord, and I'm going to make a power cable. Now this is probably not going to easily be jigged in my, maybe it will. I might get luckier than I had any right to be. We'll see if it actually stays though. I need a different wire cutter. One of my cheap wire cutters died. It was very, very sharp until it wasn't. And cheap wire cutters they're wonderful while they stay sharp. Once they're not sharp, I throw them, which is why they're cheap. When I say cheap, I'm talking like $5 cheap, and they last for a couple of months. But they're incredibly sharp while they're sharp. So, alright, I'm cutting this a lot longer than it needs to be. I'm going to trim this back to about there. So I've got just shy of 1/4 of an inch. See if that's going to fit in there nicely, and it is. Alright, let me get a soldering gun up and running. This is the part that's going to be a little dicey. Go ahead and clean my tip off. If I had a separate bench, Somebody had asked me recently, I don't remember who it was, I apologize for not remembering, but somebody had asked me recently, they said they had noticed in an earlier video that I used a really nice fancy soldering station, and lately I've been using just a soldering gun, and they had asked if there was any advantage one to the other. And yeah, the advantage of a gun is it heats up really fast and it doesn't take up bench real estate. And if I had a dedicated bench for where I could just do soldering, I would use my soldering station all of the time. But really the only time I pull it out now is when I'm doing a big batch of motors and I'm not shooting video. And I will pull it out. It does have better temperature control than this gun does. I have to be a little bit more, I have to handle this a lot more gingerly than I do my soldering station, because this puts out an inordinate amount of heat really fast. And you got to be careful with that, especially in this case where I'm working with a plastic connector body and gold-plated copper pins that conduct heat really, really quickly. So it's like get in there, get the solder flowing, and get off of it real fast. Okay. Oops, I don't like that. Get that off. There we go. We'll let that cool a little bit, because we have to do some reassembly on this. Now, you got to remember that this has a threaded end that's going to be connecting. So when we run the wire through here, we want the threaded end facing the connector itself, thusly. And now, I want to do something to insulate this. Actually, I want to just take a little bit of heat and just, there we go. I'm going to knock a little piece of that solder back. There we go. Actually, I'm going to trim it with a little clipper. I just want to get that. Just trim that back just a skosh. There we go. And I ordinarily don't use electrical tape inside of a connector, but I'm going to play it really, really safe with this. And I'm just going to put just a little tiny piece of tape in there. Just going to wrap one of the conductors with a little tiny piece of tape. It's in. I'm going to bring it around. I'm just going to wrap it like that. Okay? And then take my utility scissors and just trim that back. That just put a little bit of insulation on that. That'll be fine. Okay, now take the body of the connector, the plastic body, run the wire through it, screw that on. Okay, and now take the end clamp, bring that through, screw the end clamp on. Alright, that's all nice and tight. Everything's tightened up. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the plug on. Now, you'll notice I wasn't overly concerned as to which wire went where, because I do not have a polarized plug for this. If I was doing this with a polarized plug, or if I was doing a 3-wire connector and grounding the sewing machine, this would be a bit different. That is coming. I am going to do a video showing all of that. I have more connectors of other varieties on order from my supplier, but I wanted to show you this version first. I know this is running kind of long, but I thought this was an important thing for you guys to see, that you didn't have to be endangered by Chicago plugs any longer, and you could have a nice detachable power cord that could be safe for a bentwood case without using the 3-wire Singer. Get that through here. Okay. I'll go ahead and I'll put this together. I don't know why I named my weekly Sunday morning show Sunday Morning Quickies, because they always run really, really long. And for that I do apologize. Actually, no, I don't. I'm not apologizing for anything today. Okay, and there we go. Plug together. Get it plugged in. Bada bing, bada boom. Alright. Let me get all this stuff out of the way and bring the sewing machine back up onto the bench. And we're going to plug this in and we're going to try it out with its knee bar controller and see if I electrocute myself. Which if I do, I'll still put the video up and you guys can have a good laugh. Or if I'm successful. So, hang tight. Okay kids, here we go. We have the new connector, the new male panel connector mounted up on that metal panel. We have a power cord made with the female end and a regular 120 volt plug. Notice that it is keyed, so it's easy to find. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to plug that in, and it does screw in place, so it's not going to pop off. I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the power on my camera stand here. And not getting zapped. I'm not getting it. I'm not feeling any tingles. We're doing good. Yeah, works fine. Now, yeah, the blue is kind of ugly. I get that. I was sharing this information with my friends Jen DeLeo at Sewing Machine Rehab and Marie Hill at Promethean Sewing Machines. And Marie says she's got a primer that should work on this plastic. So yeah, these could be primed and painted black so that they would be disguised. That'd be cool if that would work. Awesome. Right now, I am not going to say what these parts are specifically or what my supplier is, because there's other things I want to do. This way, I've got it set up for a machine that's got an integrated knee bar controller. A lot of these old machines you will find have a light and a motor that's all hardwired together along with a power cord. My goal is to be able to have everything have a detachable power cord of some form, whether it be the standard Singer 3-pin block, which is great, I love those, or this. And I like the idea of not having Chicago plugs in my life anymore. Now, I know the purists are probably going to be a little upset with me. Honestly, it's a safety issue as far as I'm concerned. Technology has come a long way, and we've come a long way away from Chicago plugs. They're not made anymore, and they're not made for a darn good reason. So anyway, I'm going to be doing more experiments and more testing. I have located a source of female panel mounts so that you could have the male panel mount providing power to the system and the female panel mount going off to a foot controller. There's also a possibility they make these things in different pin configurations of having everything on one connector. Not really a big fan of that thought for this. I would rather have them as separate for power and foot controller, simply because of the how close the pins have to be to each other. But anyway, that's what I'm doing with this. I want to know what you think. I'm I will eventually release all the information once we do a little bit more testing, but I wanted to show this to you guys. And I will also be offering this as a service. If people don't feel comfortable doing the wiring, I'd be willing to do the wiring for people as well. But like I said, that's in the future. We got to make sure that this is going to work, that this is going to be, most importantly, safe. So I'm going to torture test this, and I'll be reporting back. But anyway, let me know what you think. If it's something you think is a good idea, bad idea, if because I'm not being a purist, you think I should be drawn and quartered, or, you know, my head carried around on a pike, let me know. I'm really interested. So anyway, that's what I've got for you this week. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.